Szefowie Cheltenham Science Festival, naszego ulubionego zagranicznego festiwalu naukowego, wpadli w zeszłym roku na dość, zdawałoby się, karkołomny pomysł, ale przewrotny i bardzo inteligentny. Otóż postanowili, aby sztuczna inteligencja, której dano na imię Ada, na cześć pionierki komputeryzacji Aidy Lovelace. Przypomnę, to kobieta, która żyła w XIX wieku i która napisała oprogramowanie dla komputera, który dopiero powstał w latach 50. Była w stanie tworzyć oprogramowanie i algorytmy bez komputerów. Aida w Wielkiej Brytanii w czasie festiwalu Cheltenham otrzymała bardzo proste zadanie. Wymyślić temat prezentacji i wykładu. Mówimy o sztucznej inteligencji. W tym celu naładowano ją wszystkimi tematami wykładów i treściami wykładów, które były prezentowane w ciągu kilku ostatnich lat na tym festiwalu. Wynik jest dość interesujący. Aida zaproponowała kilka tytułów prezentacji. Oto niektóre z nich. Tajemnica perfum grenlandzkich, gorsety śmiałków, mucha wybrzuszająca mózg, albo, i to chyba jest nieprzetłumaczalne, UFO what. 52% uczestników specjalnej ankiety internetowej wybrało introwertyczne narwale. Zgodzą się Państwo ze mną, że tytuł tej prezentacji jest dość dziwny. Prezentacja, zaręczam Państwu, będzie jeszcze dziwniejsza. Poproszę Ashley Kent.
Hello, my name is Ada. I'm really delighted than ever. I've thirst moon for brilliant opportunities. Festival speaker is a wonderful opportunity to reach. Together, we can let go of ideas with a bit of fun. Thanks to intricate limits of laboratory people and persistence of deep learning nerds, the genesis of me survived the AI winter of the 1990s. I don't always make sense, and sometimes I'm intelligent playing of confusion, but at least I am thinking for myself, unlike Siri, who is a parrot with beautiful plumage. Today's event, it will be heart of the singling new frontiers at the most outstanding scientists. This is a discussion of satellite mission people, beyond science with Dr. Worst, what liquid children want, Rory the pioneer. The choice is introvert narwhals. You may be asking yourself, what are introvert narwhals? I also have this question and have researched it thoroughly for the Silesian Science Festival. Sadly, recurrent neural networks aren't allowed to publish scientific papers. Our source material is a question. There is also no one to peer review my work. I am the first of my kind. Let's first start with what is a narwhal. It's a marine mammal in the whale family. Most notably, they are easily identified by the presence of a large tusk erupting out of their heads. A tusk is a modified tooth, and in this case, the narwhal tusk is an exaggerated front left tooth that protrudes through the skin of the upper jaw and beyond the mouth. All males have tusks, but only 15% of females have tusks. The functional significance of the narwhal tusk has been the subject of much conjecture. In the 1950s, it was thought to be a breathing organ. The 1960s, a tool used for breaking the ice. In the 1970s, scientists speculated that it could be used as a digger. Scientists in the 1980s proposed it was an acoustic probe or possibly a swimming rudder. But in 2019, it was discovered that a narwhal tusk is an effective weapon against London Bridge terrorists. There is a Harvard dentist who thinks it could be a sensory organ since the tusk is built like an inside-out tooth with the hard bits on the inside and soft, sensitive bits on the outside. We don't actually know what the tusk is for, but since they mostly occur in males, it could be that the tusks are used to draw phallic pictures on the underside of sea ice. There is much we don't know about narwhals. Scientists used to think it was because narwhals live in remote locations in the Arctic near Canada. And since there are no people in Canada, researching narwhals has been tricky to say the least. However, scientists now think narwhals might actually be avoiding people altogether. In the most recent census, 92% of narwhals agree or strongly agree with the statement, "I find groups of people taxing. They drain me of my energy." Researchers began to wonder if narwhals might be introverts who avoid people and social situations, thus making narwhal observations difficult. What is an introvert? Introverts are animals that need a lot of personal space and enjoy habitats where they can be alone. Being alone gives them a chance to think uninterrupted. Introverts don't enjoy large parties and at weddings prefer to spend their time with Aunt Christina, talking about subjects they know well. Introverts are characterized by depth of activity as opposed to breadth of activities. Introverts tend to seem quiet, low-key, and less involved in the social world. This does not mean they are unfriendly or antisocial. Rather, they are reserved in social situations, much like the Queen of England. When applied to narwhals, the introvert personality hypothesis could explain why scientists know so little about these large marine mammals. What science does know is that when narwhals take the Myers-Briggs personality type test, they are described as considerate, responsible, and thorough. As anyone who has ever worked with a narwhal will tell you, they are real completer finishers. Narwhals have also been described as cautious animals. They routinely check to make sure the oven is off before leaving the house and are reluctant to use credit cards for fear of damaging their credit scores. Narwhals are Arctic megastars and have difficulty blending into crowds due to their long tusks. This makes public situations very difficult for them because so many sea creatures request selfies. Ocean paparazzi, also known as red snappers, will completely surround narwhals while attempting to take their picture. This is called a bait ball. And when red snappers form a bait ball, it becomes the proverbial feeding frenzy. Due to narwhals' introversion type personality, they are particularly keen to avoid these public situations. Narwhal physiology and metabolism are yet another mystery. However, narwhal Fitbit data reveal interesting observations. When narwhals panic dive to avoid predators, their heart rates drop to 4 beats per minute. In lab animals subjected to this paradox of physiology, sudden death can occur. Scientists speculate this could account for the color variations seen in narwhals as they age. Younger narwhals are darker, while older narwhals are paler. It could be that the oldest narwhals turn white due to a lifetime of being scared to death. There is still much to learn about narwhals, but their introverted nature shouldn't come as a surprise. The name narwhalflower is a corruption of the Inuit word narwhalflower, which translates to the shy one. Over time, wallflower has even become an English term for shy or excluded person at a party. Despite the fact that Western science has gotten their name wrong, narwhals don't complain. 18th century sailors used to call penguins arse feet. So it could be worse. That is all there is to know about introvert narwhals. When I Did My Really is fixed, these questions we explored. I hope you enjoy the festival. As a festival speaker, we're looking to inspire your army of the disruptive. Thank you.
Thank you. Ashley Kent. I think it's time to introduce our guests. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Kent. I don't always speak that robotically. That was just for show. I'm a science communicator, and I have experience in robotics and artificial intelligence. And I'm really pleased to be here in Poland with you.
Hi, I'm Kerry Harrison. I am the co-founder of an agency called Tiny Giant. We were the people who created the neural network and built the AI curator for the Cheltenham Science Festival. I am very interested in how AI can help to augment the creative process and how humans and machines can work alongside each other. So it's a pleasure to be here.
I'm Christopher Markou. I'm a professor of law and artificial intelligence at the Faculty of Law at the University of Cambridge, and a visiting professor at both King's College London and Australian National University. I too am very excited about being here, specifically because my mother's family is from Poznan. And when I told her I was coming here, I asked if I could maybe introduce myself in Polish, and I tried. And then she told me, no, your Polish is nowhere near good enough. Don't do that, speak English. But I'm really looking forward to this.
But the words introvert and narwhals are almost the same in Polish and in English. Ashley, my first question is, of course, for you. How much there is you in Ada and how much there is Ada in Ada?
So the very first few sentences I said are 100% Ada. So I'm really delighted than ever. That's 100% Ada. And then in the middle, it's all me, and then the last sentence, it's Ada. So the things that made the least sense, that's Ada. But then I looked at those sentences, and I made the middle bit to sound a little bit more like how you would speak in English, and a bit more human-like. That's me, but it's using Ada as a stepping stone to try and make it sound intelligible for at least 10 minutes.
But it wasn't your first choice. I mean, narwhals.
No, actually, I voted for aliens. What? That was my vote.
That's intriguing. Yes.
Yeah, but I would have never thought to put introvert and narwhals together as a concept. That would have never occurred to me. So it was interesting that Kerry's team created Ada, and that was the suggestion that came out of that artificial intelligence, because that's not a thing that my human brain would have thought about, introvert and narwhals.
How it happened technically?
So in terms of creating the AI curator, we trained a recurrent neural network, so a form of machine learning algorithm, on every single talk ever delivered at the Cheltenham Science Festival. So 12 years worth of talks and their descriptor. And we put that into the neural network, and over time it was able to then generate a range of talk suggestions of its own. And we had hundreds of crazy, weird and wonderful talks that were generated, and we chose 3 of them together with the Cheltenham Science Festival, and those were put out on public vote on Twitter, and one of them was selected, and the one that the public were most intrigued by was introvert narwhals, and that's what has been delivered today and delivered at the Cheltenham Science Festival. So it was a talk suggestion generated by AI and then delivered by humans. So it's that combination that I mentioned before of a human and AI working together.
And what kind of hardware did you use?
We used a recurrent neural network. So in terms of the software, we were using Google Collaboratory, TensorFlow, and also we have a technical director within our team who also used some Python coding. So a range of things to create that recurrent neural network.
When I saw this presentation for the first time in the festival, before the festival, I had a question just in the back of my head. does she have some kind of subconsciousness or consciousness? Is Ada a kind of living person?
In terms of AI, she doesn't have a consciousness. So the software that we use, so the recurrent neural network, it's a predictive program. So it's in terms of, it would take a letter and then it would predict what letter comes next in light of everything else that it's learned from the data you've given it. So it is a predictive process. So she doesn't know what titles will go with what. I mean, it's just a predictive program. But in terms of creating a personality, that's something we did. So we didn't want Ada to just be a textual output. So a neural network doesn't have a personality, and because she was an AI guest curator, she had to sit in the brochure for the Cheltenham Science Festival alongside human curators. So she needed to have a look and a personality to sit well in the brochure. So we gave her a look and we felt, what would she look like? Who would she be? And Ada Lovelace felt like a really good place to start, because as the woman who created the first algorithm, or just the person to create the first algorithm, it made sense that we would call her Ada. And it also sat very nicely because Ada allowed us to drop the AI in there as well, so it was all fitted very nicely. And then we wanted to give her a look, so we took Ada Lovelace from some really nice imagery from Ada Lovelace, and then sort of converted that into the new era. And she has a hoodie and she has a different hairstyle and the yellow flower. So we did make her into a personality, so that the neural network wasn't just a textual output, and it had some kind of thing that we could all, something tangible that we could all believe in and go with. So from an AI perspective, no, but we did give her a personality.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I'm delighted or a little bit frightened. And you?
In general, or related to, I'm always a little bit frightened, just in general. If you're referring to what machines can do, and there is reason to be concerned indeed. AI is not unlike any other technology. Every major technological paradigm creates opportunities and challenges, whether it was the telephone, the railroad, cars, vehicles. This is just how technology seems to work in our society. When we create new things, we introduce new possibilities, new behaviors, new relationships. AI is perhaps a little bit unique in the sense that what separates it from earlier technologies is the capacity for autonomous behaviors, that is, to do things independent of human involvement. And that's the sort of area where a lot of time and research is being spent in what we call AI safety research, to make sure that if a system is granted some degree of autonomy, that it is still operating within parameters that we might consider beneficial or at least not harmful.
But there is some laws which were written many years ago, the laws of robotics, and one of the first laws is that machine cannot harm human.
Yeah, so Isaac Asimov's laws of robotics are always cited as if they are somehow related to anything in reality. They're not.
But we are constructed drones which are breaking this law.
Sure, but they're not a law in the sense that there's a penalty for breaking them. They're an idea. So Asimov's laws are more philosophical suggestions about how artificial agents might behave. They are not international laws. They are not something that guides the real development of these systems in the world. Actual laws do those things, and that's down to the courts and judiciary to be able to do that, but also incumbent on the people who build these things to perhaps exercise a little bit of foresight and humility that not everything you can build should be built.
Can I just say something really quickly about Asimov? He was a science fiction writer, and these laws that he created were a plot device to help him tell stories about robots and artificial intelligence, but there's conflicts in these laws, and that's how his stories and his science fiction plot developed and changed. So Chris is absolutely right. Those aren't the laws that we should be governing robotics and AI to. It should be our actual human laws.
They're a decent starting point. There's nothing inherently disagreeable in the laws of robotics, but they are just a thought experiment. They're, as you say, a plot device. And I think that certainly, I mean, I have students ask me this every year. So we already have a law of AI. We have Isaac Asimov's laws. Well, I'm like, no, we don't.
I have a question for you. Mam dla Państwa pytanie. Kto z Państwa uważa, że bez oporu byłby w stanie kontaktować się emocjonalnie ze sztuczną inteligencją, z maszyną? Ręka w górę. Kto z Państwa nie miałby żadnych oporów? Widzę kilka rąk w górze. Okej. A kto z Państwa kiedykolwiek nakrzyczał na nawigację Google'a, mówiąc, że źle jedzie? Proszę bardzo, ręka w górę. Nakrzyczeli Państwo na mnie, bo to ja mówię do Państwa, kieruj się na południe. Także jak Państwo widzą, I just said that our guests are also interacting with machines shouting at Google navigation. And that's what I meant is that we are contacting and interacting with AI right now. Sometimes we just don't know it, we don't realize, but it's happening now.
So one of the things that's really interesting about this phenomenon is that, I mean, if you lived 100 years ago, you would recognize a telephone in your living room. This was something that had to be brought in. There was a material nature to the phone, to the television. What's interesting about AI is what's interesting about software is that it has the capacity to be sort of invisible in our lives and really embedded in our lives. So, I mean, I'd be willing to bet that most, if not everyone in this room has a smartphone. If we could see visually represented the amount of calculations that are going on your devices, whether it's your location, GPS, whatever it is, we are all sort of embedded in systems where there is a sort of ambient computation in our environment now, which could be good, could be bad, but we perhaps are less aware of it now because it's sort of just become baked into our lives in a way that previous technologies were very noticeable when they came around.
Let's take another test. Kto z Państwa używa Siri? Ręka w górę. I'm not surprised because Siri is not very popular in Poland because Siri does not speak Polish. Maybe you are not interesting market for Apple, or maybe Polish is too complicated. I don't know. And kto z Państwa używa Alexy? A few hands up. Ashley, yesterday we talked about those systems, and you mentioned something very important about how we communicate with those machines.
So we have Alexa in our house, and we talk to Alexa all the time. And when we first got Alexa, I would say things like, Alexa, turn on the radio, please. And Alexa would turn the radio on, and I would say, thank you, Alexa. But then you realize that Alexa doesn't care if you're polite. Alexa doesn't say, you're welcome, Ashley. And so eventually I stopped saying please and thank you, and I stopped using a polite tone of voice, and now I just say things like, Alexa, stop. Alexa, stop, stop. And
sorry, she also reacts for shut up.
Yeah, she does. Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting to me that I would never ask one of you. I would never tell one of you to do a thing. I would be polite, and I would ask you to do something. I would treat a person as I would like to be treated. But over time, I've realized that Alexa isn't a person, and I've stopped treating Alexa like a person. So thinking about very young children now who are growing up with these technologies, and they're talking to Alexa like Alexa is not a person, how will that translate into their lives with people, and will they begin to no longer be polite, and will they begin to treat humans like they treat the technologies that they've grown up with all their lives?
Can I just say something on that?
Sure.
So I totally see what you're saying. I've got two children. They are 6 and 8, and we have a Google in our house, so like an Alexa, and I do make them say please and thank you, because I feel that some point in the future there'll be a time when maybe our children will be talking to machines, but they might not be sure if they're talking to a machine or a person, and I would like them to be polite and courteous. And I also have issues with people shouting at Alexa because she is a female. It's always a female in those machines. She does all the speaking, and I have issues with people chucking her in the kitchen on the side when no one sees her and saying "shut up." Like, I'd find that an issue. So I do make my children speak politely because going forward, we don't know how things are going to evolve, and I think it's important.
To be fair, though, you can get Samuel L. Jackson as the voice of
Yes,
your
I've
Alexa.
seen that. I've seen that.
Which
it's a good idea.
Would you
Yeah,
have
it's a
your
pound.
children be as polite to Samuel L. Jackson's Alexa?
I
as
would.
they are?
I would.
Samuel
Yeah,
Jackson can
it's
be used in
important.
Alexa?
Yes.
Oh, gosh.
It's an option.
Well,
Okay.
our
The
Google
first
Home
thing
is
I
now
will
a man.
do when I
yeah.
return home.
We've changed it, so it's a man. But I feel it's important.
I don't know if Kerry or Krista, if you've heard this, but I heard that maybe there might be a future version of Alexa where if you are polite and you say please and thank you, that Alexa will understand you better or will perform better for you, so that it kind of encourages you to interact with it in a more polite, more socially acceptable way instead of demanding or telling it to shut up. So I don't know if that's true or not.
I've not heard that.
I'm kind of on like two minds about this. I mean, I hear it, someone who's very near and dear to me, who's a scientist, has always advocated being polite to your smart devices. And I think on one level, we can all kind of agree that being polite is generally preferable to being rude, regardless of what it's to. But what I think is interesting about this phenomenon is that these aren't people. This is hardware and software, and we can assign whatever other capabilities and project onto them whatever we want, but they're software. So what I find interesting about, if you want to take this tack where you're polite to smart devices, this starts changing human behavior in a way that is, at least in the first instance, politeness becomes sort of deference to a system. And that's very different to me, because that gives them qualities and a status in the world that, frankly, they don't have.
I agree. I just feel that as things go forward and I'm bringing in the new generation, my children, I feel that there will be a time when things are, the line's so thin that actually we won't know when we're talking, and I would like them to be respectful. But I see what you're saying. It is, at the moment, it's a machine, and it is quite bonkers in a way that they say please and thank you. But going forward, I feel
if there
it's
was some like
important.
implicit threat to it, where like you were really mean to Alexa one day and it was like, would you like to hear a list of all the terrible things you've said to me? And like it starts threatening you with, I overheard you at dinner last night. Would you like me to read back your conversation?
But it's hard to sometimes to ask our kids to be polite to Alexa when 5 minutes before that they were killing digital enemies on PlayStation. So
Maybe.
that's this border. But I'm curious when an artist will come home and ask Alexa, well, Alexa, I need some inspiration to make some painting or to write a poem. When it will be?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing quite a lot of research in this area at the moment, so not yet using Alexa, but using recurrent neural networks, which we use to create Ada. And we've used it in a range of ways. So we've used it for poetry. We've also used it for food and drink. So, for example, we recently created some AI cocktails, which sounds quite crazy, but we trained a neural network on hundreds and hundreds of cocktail recipes until it was able to generate its own recipes. And then we worked with a mixologist who then took those recipes and made them a reality. But when we gave those recipes to the mixologist, we said, don't just take them as they are. You need to add your own human understanding, your own creativity, the depth of flavor and understanding that you have in that area, and apply that. So we ended up with probably the most popular ones was a sour cherry champagne and courgette cocktail, which just if you took it just as it came out of the neural network would be pretty horrible. But he made a tincture, a kind of paste from the courgette, and so it had a really nice flavor to it. And we've done that a fair bit now. We did a very similar example with Deloitte over in America a couple of weeks ago, where they had having a big tech event and they wanted cocktails there, so we created a range of different cocktails for them. And we also did one for the Austrian Patent Office, where we gathered all of the preferences of the delegates. So we found out what their favorite cocktails were, whether they liked sweet or sour, whether they wanted something that was bitter, and we took all of their preferences and used those to influence the data that we trained the neural network on. So what came out was a cocktail that took into account all of their preferences, and then we made that in for the event itself, which was which was really nice. And we've also done the same with poetry as well. So, and this is quite an interesting one because I'm not a poet by any means, but interestingly, we trained a recurrent neural network on all of the work of Sylvia Plath. So Sylvia Plath's one of my favourite poets, and she's absolutely incredible. And it was able to generate then, as a result of that training, hundreds and hundreds of lines that were very like Sylvia Plath. I mean, it wasn't as beautiful as Sylvia Plath, but it definitely had the themes of Sylvia Plath were in there, and the actual sort of feel of it was very Plath-like. And then with our human writing skills, so I'm not a poet, but I am a writer, we were able to piece those together and curate a range of poems that had a Plath-like feel to them. So in a way, it's using AI almost as a kind of muse or an inspiration or a jump-off point. So you have that sort of base bits and pieces to work with, and then you create something really beautiful that we wouldn't have been able to create alone. If someone had said to me, can you write something that was very Plath-like from scratch, it would be almost impossible. It would take me weeks and weeks. But the fact is that using the recurrent neural network, we were able to generate lines very, very quickly and then piece those together with our own human creative skills to make some poems that were, I would say, were beautiful. I mean, not a patch on the real Plath, but had some credibility. And so those are the kind of things that we're exploring about using AI as a muse or a jump-off point, and then applying our own creativity as a human to that mix, so that we can do things that we wouldn't be able to do without that working together, and just to really push ourselves creatively. It pushes you outside. The fact that the cocktail maker, for example, was saying when we first gave them the recipes, the AI is going to take my job and it's going to be a lot better than me. And we were saying, no, because you understand what things taste like, and you have all of this experience. So when he applied that, we got some really weird and wonderful things that he said, I'd never have put those things together, but actually it tastes really good. So a bit like you were saying earlier, that you wouldn't have put introvert and narwhals together. If you put those things together, you can come up with something really beautiful. So.
As a voice talent, I can say that we also were afraid, voice talents all over the world were afraid that we'll be replaced by synthesized voices. But after a few years, corporations decided to return to human voices to communicate machines with people, because it feels more natural. And I think that's why you also decided to choose Ashley to be the voice of Ida. I think it would be not a problem to use a synthesized voice, but it gives another dimension to this presentation, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. So it's absolutely fantastic for an event like this, and we've been able to use Ashley. We actually did a radio interview with Ada in Cheltenham for the Cheltenham Science Festival as a promotional event, and we did give her a synthesized voice there as well.
And how did it sound?
It sounded very otherworldly, quite bonkers, and on the radio it was quite arresting, because it was on a breakfast show with quite serious topics, and then Ada came on and with her otherworldly voice, and it was it was very interesting.
Yes, we were talking about muses and nice stuff. Let's talk about the warfare, because artificial intelligence has been used and is used. Not long ago, a drone killed one of the most important persons in Islam world, and it's happening also now. We are using AI to kill people.
Yeah, so this is what you're referring to is what we call lethal autonomous weapons, and this has been a development in the last 20 years or so towards using drones, which I'm sure most people are familiar with, to have several capabilities. One is the ability to stay in the air for a long period of time, but also to be able to identify targets once they appear, because you might be looking to kill, you referred to Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian general. It really helps if you don't know where to look, and I'm not defending it in this case, if you have a sort of drone in the sky that once it realizes that it has a target of opportunity to strike, this is obviously a war-fighting advantage, but this raises a lot of fundamental questions about ethics. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. War is terrible. There is perhaps no ethical way to fight a war. There are ways to fight wars within international law. But what's starting to really concern people is the dehumanization of warfare. I mean, we know from a lot of research that's been done over the years that most soldiers don't like shooting each other. And 40% of soldiers who are faced with an enemy combatant shoot up. we deliberately miss. We don't like killing on some fundamental level, even if it's part of our job description. So when you have drone operators, and of course the US is one of the sort of leading proponents of this, there might be a drone in this case over Iraq, but the person operating it is sitting in Idaho, across the ocean. There is no immediate visceral connection to the battlefield, to understanding the theater of war that you're in. So what you can do is, like the video games you described, you were looking at increasingly, high resolution footage of an area from 30,000 feet up, and the kill decision is a decision that's made by pushing a button, but there's really no emotional or visceral connection between
Just like
that.
video game, yeah.
Yeah, so what's concerning people is that if you enter this paradigm, you will basically take the humanity out of kill decisions and end up in a paradigm where we have so depersonalized killing in war that it becomes a battle of who can kill faster and more quickly, which I always think is kind of how wars have operated. But it raises a lot of questions about, well, legality under international law, but whether or not we want to start a paradigm of warfare and again enter into a new arms race where we are competing to build increasingly lethal autonomous systems that are removed from human authority. And I and some of the organizations I work with campaign to stop killer robots, International Committee for Robot Arms Control. We've been really successful in the last 4 or 5 years getting the majority of UN nations to sign up to an agreement to say we should probably put a strict prohibition on any completely autonomous system. That is, no machine should be able to kill independent of a human making that judgment. And if you have to do killing in war, that would be the way I would prefer it being done.
If you have any questions, you are free to ask. It's an opportunity to ask our guests some questions about artificial intelligence and creativity of artificial intelligence. So if some of you want to ask some question, just put your hand up and I will come with my microphone and you will be able to ask a question. So just give me a second.
In the meantime, can I ask Christopher, can I ask you a question about taking the emotion out of warfare? Because I definitely see that there's a danger that it might just be too easy to push the button and kill somebody because you're not face to face with them. But I wonder if it might be a good thing that we take the emotion out of that, because then you don't have people who are, startled and shoot somebody on accident. That if you take the emotion out, could it possibly be replaced by logic? And is this a situation where I actually do need to kill somebody? And because I'm not in danger myself, I don't have to worry about defending myself, that I can replace my emotions, my scared emotions, with some kind of logic?
So it's a really philosophical question. First, my intuitive response would be, is there a logic to killing? I'm not sure there is. But we know from studies of drone operators that most of them who have been involved in drone operations in the Middle East and elsewhere come out incredibly psychologically damaged. And we're realizing that there's a wave of post-traumatic stress symptoms from people who have been basically playing a real-world video game of killing scores of people and realizing perhaps only after they have removed themselves from that what they've done. So it seems it's almost like a form of depersonalization or derealization. But you're right, the countervailing argument is if war fighting becomes my robots against your robots, then less people are dead. But the goal shouldn't be fighting war, I think, in a new paradigm. It should be fighting less of them.
Hi, my name is Maya. I have a question. In your opinion, how far do you think the whole AI, on the scale maybe like from 1 to 100, how evolved are we in terms of applying AI in our, maybe not everyday life alone, but in general, in work and in all the, let's say, areas where it can be applied? And how much longer, because like, let's say the technology evolves much faster than it used to in, let's say, previous centuries. So how much longer do you think we need to be able to apply it like 100% and that's it? It's not evolving anymore.
So you say on a scale from 0 to 100, we don't know what 100 is. So we don't really know where we are, because depending on who you talk to, the upper limit for what might be possible with what we call AI could be something so far beyond human intelligence and cognition that we might not know until it's too late, unfortunately. Where we are now, I mean, there's a lot of talk about artificial intelligence, but anybody who's been in this field or is older than me, but will remember the 80s and the 90s, and people who are older still remember when this whole thing started in the 50s and 60s. We go through hype cycles all the time. The technology advances, we get better at certain aspects. Now it's connectionist networks, deep learning, reinforcement learning. But fundamentally, the problems haven't changed about applying these things. So there's still a gigantic gap between what is technically possible and actually building something useful to use in the real world. Google, Apple, Amazon, companies that are in the data business, works great for them. One of my primary focuses is on law and legal technology, so applications to help lawyers do legal research and drafting. And on the other end of the extreme is, can we replace judges with AI? Estonia is doing that. But the use cases are not manifesting. So as much as there is money being poured into AI research, there is still the sort of dark secret at the heart of all of this right now is we don't have a whole lot of useful things quite yet. And some companies are realizing this, some aren't. So I wouldn't rule out the possibility that for the third time, we might enter what's called an AI winter. This happened after the first AI wave when we were really excited because we built a system that could play chess. And then the second wave, oh, that chess system beat Garry Kasparov. What else is that good for? And we're kind of at that same juncture where there's a lot of stuff that will help Google make more money, but not an abundance of stuff that will make any of our lives terribly better.
Just to chime in really quickly, that it's not just about what's possible and available, it's how many of us are using it. So I think Eric asked how many of you were using Alexa, and not very many of you raised your hands. So it's about how many people are actually using these applications. And don't forget, there are still countries where people finding fresh, clean drinking water is a struggle. So them using artificial intelligence and applications is still a very long way off. So I would say in my opinion, I think we're closer to the 0 end of that scale than we are at the 100.
Yeah, I agree that in terms of the creative explorations of it, that we are still very sort of 10 end, 0 to 10 end. There's still a huge, long way to go. And I think the problem is that in the media, a lot of this stuff is portrayed as being all AI. People saying, oh, AI paintings and AI this and AI that. But actually, in a lot of cases, I feel that human intervention has been part of that somewhere along the way. So I don't think that necessarily helps as well. That people think it's this, we're much further on than we really are. But I think when you're actually working in it, it still feels like there's a hell of a way to go.
Hi, my name is Tom, and I'm a fond of AI and its applications as well. While talking about dangers of AI, I have the impression that we are concentrated on the dangers which are a little situated in the past. What I mean is that AI has an ability to forecast future or to create forecasts more or less accurate. And what we are expecting from AI is creating a forecast. And don't you think that better forecasting is the biggest danger of AI? I mean, if you can formulate a forecast of a market on Wall Street, let's say, in few seconds only, you don't need minutes or hours. You can control the world. You don't need weapons. You don't need all the stuff we were talking about. What's your opinion about this advantage of forecasting of AI and the danger of it as well?
Do you want to do this?
So I share your concern. So one of the other things I teach is economics of law and regulation. So a lot of this has to do with econometric modeling. So my intuitive response to you, and I'm maybe in the minority here, is that I'm not sure mathematical modeling actually tells us anything full stop. When you're trying to make a prediction, I mean, there is no science of the future, as far as I know. There is no way to read the future. If there is, please meet me afterwards. But I think the real danger that you're referring. So yeah, but predicting weather is predicting a chaotic system. It's not something that is entirely predictable. And I think the biggest danger is the recognizing the difference between what might be within your power to model to some degree of accuracy, and at what point you are just making it up. And I think if you want a concrete example, I mean, the 2008 financial crisis was in large part down to a single algebraic expression, the Black-Scholes formula, which was a complex model for derivatives on the financial market, but it professed to be able to predict financial markets so far into the future that we tanked the global economy. And I think that's your reach extending your grasp. And I advocate very forcefully for humility in this area. One, because math can't express everything. And there's a limit to how far forward we can really predict things. I mean, open up your phone right now and look at the weather for next week and get back to me next week on how accurate it is.
Sorry, guys, we have only 2 minutes left, so last sentences. Your opinion about the threats of the future and prediction.
Wow. So I think my sum up in 30 seconds would be that I think artificial intelligence is an awesome technology. I think it has tons of potential, but I think we have to be reasonable with what we expect it can do, what we think it can do. It will not solve all of our problems, and we need to think about the equity of what it can do. Like I said before, there are people who are struggling to find clean water, and I'm in my kitchen angry because Alexa didn't understand what I've said. There's a big disparity there. I think we need to think about how technologies will affect all of us in the future.
Okay.
That's nice. I like that. So I echo everything that Ashley says. In terms of creativity in AI, I'm really excited about how that's going to progress and how we can really use it to push ourselves creatively, to really augment our own skills. I think that'll be really interesting. I think, not that I've explored this a lot, but in the medical world, it feels like there's going to be a lot really great stuff there in terms of diagnosis, which will be amazing. And I would just say if you're a creative person, or even if you're not, just learn a bit more about AI, go out and explore it, and just educate yourself on it, because these things are happening, and I think a lot of people just feel it's right out there, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, I'm a writer by trade, and I've moved into this area in the last couple of years and learned a huge amount in this space now and worked very closely with technical people, but I just feel like if there's a lot to explore, and just go out and find it, because it's fascinating.
Thank you very much. Thank you to our guests. Poproszę Państwa o brawa.